Hi, everyone. Today we will be talking all about how we can build our leadership brand in 2021. And we will dive into how we can set ourselves up for success and how we can sell ourselves this year as leaders in our field. And today I'm joined by my friend Felicity Fury, and Felicity is an absolute powerhouse. She is an award-winning business owner, but she's also an entrepreneur and an engineer, and that's actually how we connected. So I met Felicity, I think about 2 years ago. Actually, we didn't meet. I just saw you on stage speaking at an international women's event. And I was so impressed by her and, how she spoke and the history and the causes that she was working for, and also that she was an entrepreneur and an engineer. And I just had to reach out afterwards. So got in touch with her and we started to catch up regularly. And since then have even done some events together and kind of kept each other accountable on this little journey. Because just a few months after I met you, I think I started my own business as well. Felicity has been a big part and support throughout my business journey. So she has worked as a civil engineer on major infrastructure projects, but she's also founded several successful businesses that she will talk a little bit about in a second as well. And now lately, she's also working within her own leadership program that she's running for millennial leaders. So we're kind of working in the same field there, which is really exciting. So welcome, Felicity, to this podcast and my YouTube video. I'm so excited to have you here on the podcast. And welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here and talk about leadership, one of my favorite topics. It's awesome.
Yes, amazing. So why don't we start with yourself and you introduce yourself a little bit and just how would you best describe yourself?
Good question. So growing up, if I think about the context of leadership, and I was thinking about this before we had this session today, what was leadership like for me growing up? And I felt like I was someone who inside I really wanted to be a leader, but didn't know how. And probably the first experience I had of putting myself forward as a leader was at school, when you do like the school captain or the heads of house and that kind of thing. And I put myself forward and I didn't get it. And I had no idea why. And I remember being really disappointed. And that was sort of when the first barrier to leadership came up for me. And then I became an engineer and started to notice around the workplace that there weren't many people like me. There weren't many women in engineering. So I wanted to do something about it. I was sick of that talk about it. I wanted to actually go and create change. So I didn't sort of set out to be a leader in that area. I just wanted to go make something happen and make a difference. And it was kind of like more of an anger and frustration than anything else. So that really kickstarted my leadership journey when I was about 25 years old and when I started my first business. So as you mentioned, I've got a couple of businesses. Some are in STEM education, one in leadership education and property, and a whole range of different things. And I love getting to mix that business side of things and also that engineering mindset together.
So can you just share with us a little bit about, I imagine you started off after your studies in a very traditional career, as an engineer. So as did I. And then what kind of created the spark or the courage for you to start your own business and actually go into that entrepreneurial space so early on?
Well, yeah, you're right. It was very traditional. I left school, went to university and became an engineer because my teacher inspired me to do that. And I thought to be a good engineer, you sit at your desk, you do calculations all day, you become a graduate, then an engineer, then a senior engineer. And my ambitions for my career when I was in my 20s was to be a team leader one day. That's all I kind of could hope for, because that's all I could see around me. And this opportunity came up to run this event for girls, and I put my hand up to say, I'm going to lead it. And what was great about that was I got outside of my workplace, and it started off as a side project and working outside of work hours. But actually what I learned was so valuable for my career, because I got to see that I have strengths in communications and working with people. And I thought good engineers, like I said, do calculations, and that those strengths weren't really valuable in the engineering workplace. So I started to learn so much about my capabilities that I had no idea about. So it started off as one event for girls to find out about engineering, and we had amazing results. We had 57% of the students change their mind from a no to a yes about engineering. So I was totally hooked from that moment. And it was more so me seeing the change I could make and the potential for this idea that got me excited. And in our first year, we had no bank account. We weren't registered as a not-for-profit, which I don't recommend people doing at all, but I just wanted to make it happen. So I called in favors from so many people. And that first year, we ended up having 10 events together and reaching 850 students. So that spark and that drive kicked in. And when I saw, here's the difference I could make. And also, wow, I could actually do something if I put my mind to it.
Amazing. Well done. I'm so impressed by that, because when I reflect back on myself, I mean, I did a bachelor and a master's degree right after another. And in Germany, it takes a little bit longer to finish university. So I think I only entered the workforce really at the age of, I want to say maybe 26. And by that time you had already started with, your own business in that age. So looking back, I'm like, wow, if I compare that journey, it's a completely different journey. And I feel like you've learned some skills really early on that have allowed yourself to now actually be so broadly faceted in your career and in the choice that you make, which is pretty amazing. But I also love that you were so invested in supporting girls to make that decision to join the engineering field, because I remember that I was just one of a few, and it never really bothered me or was an issue, or I never really thought much about it until I really started my career and I was in meeting rooms all the time, just the only girl in there. I mean, this could be a whole nother podcast episode. I think maybe we have to do that in a few months' time. But yeah, very impressed by your journey. And so your whole career was obviously a bit different than to other people. And how would you define, what kind of leader are you? Like, what are the roles where you are showing your leadership nowadays?
Good question. I've been talking about this with my husband a lot, because most recently we started a business together, and he's very different from me, and also not an engineer. So he has a completely different way of thinking. So for me, I'd say my strengths are coming up with a vision and getting people on board with an idea, being that front facing person. And how I learned that about myself was actually asking mentors. So asking them, what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? My weaknesses would be not really great at the follow through and that kind of detailed back end side of things. So that's why I think it's important for people to understand their strengths. And you do some great work on that, of people understanding what their strengths in leadership are, because then you can pair that to substitute those weaknesses as well. So yeah, definitely the vision side of things and getting people excited, kind of like rallying the troops would be my approach. And I love the idea of this servant model of leadership. So really having the people lead and people getting up underneath each other. And I think to do that is to lead from the back and really support and nurture people in their goals and their strengths.
I love that. Yes, I'm all about the strength. And for me also, that's been one of the major things or learnings in my career, because even though I studied engineering, I was never a detailed engineer. Like, I was never interested in all the nitty gritty. You know how some engineers to tell the stories, how even as a kid, they kind of disassembled a car and then put it back together, and they really wanted to understand how everything works. I always got a bit bored by all that detail, to be honest. For me, it was always about the big picture and really driving that. And so, when I went into my role, like for me, it was about manufacturing engineering and really planning how a product is made, but like from a top-down point of view, and really starting to look from start to finish, but not the really detail. And so for me, it was really early on that I moved into team leading roles, because that allowed me to have that a bit broader view instead of being responsible for the little details. And so that's how I found my leadership purpose, I think, was just to lead the bigger vision as well. So very similar to you. But what I love about your story and your examples is that it almost seems like you've created your own opportunities to be a leader. And I always say when I work with my clients that everybody can be a leader, because for me, leadership is about creating impact and having a message to share and having the courage to step up and share your message and really creating impact and change. And that can be in all kinds of different capacities. So I really love that you have all these different facets where you actually show up as a leader in your own businesses, but also in your work as an employee. But then also now you're just creating your new businesses and the new way of working. Would you like to share a little bit about that? How do you define yourself as a leader? Like, how did you come up with these ideas? And when did you realize I am actually a leader in this?
I think it was that moment where I put my hand up in the meeting to say, I want to do something about this. That was a really defining moment for me. And I think every day we have choices. And I love that Viktor Frankl quote, between stimulus and response, there is a space. And so each day we have a moment to choose to be a leader. And it goes in every area of life, like you said, like even in families, you know, I know, like, for example, my husband, his mum has been diagnosed with dementia, and he's really had to step up to be a leader in his family and to bring everybody together. So it's not just in our workplaces. And there's so many moments in our lives that we have that opportunity to be a leader. And I think the first thing for people to think about is, where are those opportunities, and being open-minded to them and switch on to the opportunity. Because if we're sitting here complaining about, like, I never get opportunities, or there's no way I could sort of step up, then we're first of all closed to that opportunity. So I think by being open-minded about it and looking for, and it could actually be something that's really, really small and simple. Putting my hand up to run an event, like that doesn't sound like a big deal, right? But the way that we did it, where we got companies involved, hundreds of volunteers, it became this really big, exciting thing. There's so much potential when you start saying yes to things and taking on yourself as a leader. And I think the important thing for each person to think about is, what are you standing for as a leader? What are you fighting for? Are you fighting for, you know, equality or gender diversity? Or is it something simple like, I'm looking at my coffee cup here, which is a disposable coffee cup? Is it around the environment or climate change? What is that thing for you? And once you're clear and settled with yourself, then you can be unstoppable, I think, in your leadership.
Amazing. And that's a really great segue into our topic today when we talk about a leadership brand, because one key aspect of your leadership brand is actually knowing your purpose and becoming really clear about your purpose. And you're right, once we know that, then we can create those opportunities ourselves, because then we become a leader for this purpose, and that can take any form, shape that we want it to be, to create that impact and achieve that purpose. So let's dive into that a little bit more. What do you think makes a really strong leadership brand?
I think there are three things that make a strong brand. The first one is doing the work for yourself and doing the thinking on, what do you stand for, what do you believe in, and what's your purpose. So doing some exercise on finding your why, creating a vision for yourself in your life. So when you have that vision and you have those big goals, and I'm talking like 40-year goals, as well as the next 3 years and the next 12 months. When you've got that vision, then you have got those goalposts to head towards. Now that might change over time, but you're setting yourself on that course and into that direction. And you might go down that path, find out a goal is not one that you want to achieve, which has definitely happened for me. And then you got to that point because you set that intention in the first place. So the first piece is really, what are you standing for? Like when the chips are down, when you're like tired, when you're like, but I don't want to, what are you going to be fighting for? And the second thing is being really clear in your communication, clear for yourself and a clear message to other people. So if someone asks you what's your vision or what's your why, you have it, you are on top of it. And you never know when you're going to be in an elevator with a CEO. Literally, that's happened to me. Or a mistake phone call from Toyota, which they were trying to find another company that did what we did. And I pitched them on what we did, and we ended up getting funding to run projects. You just never know when that's going to happen. So being really clear about it. And I'd encourage people to practice it in the mirror, practice it with your friends. And then the third thing is repetition. And one of my mentors shared this with me about the work we did with the not-for-profit, which is called Power of Engineering. And I thought it was kind of boring that we just did the same thing over and over again. Like, we run free one-day events for girls and regional students in year 9 and 10 to inspire them about engineering careers. Now, I've said that thousands of times, and I find it a bit like, oh my gosh, I've said it so many times. But what my mentor said was really valuable about that was that repetition, people were so clear about what I was up to. They could see where I was going and they could get on board with that. So it might seem like I've said this once before, why am I saying it again? But repeating to the market or people what your brand is really, really important and powerful. And it could be something simple. Like for me, mine is around being authentic, being passionate, and being inspiring. Mm-hmm. So when I'm out there talking to people, I check in with myself, am I being that right now? So it could be something as simple as that in the way that you communicate as a leader.
So kind of what you're hinting there too is also being really clear on your values as well, and what you really stand for and how you want to portray yourself to the world or to the people that you meet. Really interesting. So I really love how you put that together. And I think even when we look at that from a perspective of someone that is in a corporate career, I think being really clear about our goals is really important. And it can be quite difficult, because I remember when I was in the corporate world, And I was in there for 10 years, right? Doing my leadership, like climbing the ladder, as you say. And it worked really well. I was successful, but I found it always really hard to know what the next step would be, because it's really hard when you're in it to see, especially when you're at the start of your career, to see where else you can go or what the opportunities are up there, because you don't know the roles and the business is a bit different up there. But the problem is that if you have a great manager, they're really good at giving you some words and helping you figure out what the next step is. But most managers, or often that I found, was they were not really good at that themselves. So then they couldn't really tell me where my path could go. So it was really about me starting to talk to people in other industries in my company, read, do research, listen to podcasts, and starting to research and connecting to people to hear about what else is out there, what else are opportunities, so that I could become really clear about where do I want to go. And of course, that has changed now from being in a corporate world to now running my own business. But I think you're really right that it's up to us to know what is our goal, where do we want to go, and find ways to explore what that could look like. You mentioned mentors. I think that's an amazing and important part on anybody's journey, to really have these mentors that are this one step ahead or two steps ahead, and that can help us to get that inspiration. But I think it's really important to take charge and ownership of where we want to go and what that could look like. But it can feel quite daunting to think about your purpose. So what would be your tip to get started? Like, how would people figure out their purpose?
Oh, that's a great question. And before I answer that, I just had a flashback of how I've not done this well. So I might share that. And I was just so scared of my managers and like making mistakes. And early in my career, I apologize to anyone who met me then. I feel like I was like a scared little mouse of just, oh my gosh, don't screw it up. Don't ask too many questions. I really was, to the point where I would spend the whole conversation with my manager. I remember one time he was explaining how to design a dam wall thing. And I just was thinking, oh my gosh, I have no idea what he's talking about. This is so overwhelming. And then I finished the conversation and I thought, oh my gosh, I have no idea what he just talked about. And then I can't ask any questions because I was just in my head so much thinking about what he talked about. So I think one of the first things to barriers to people's purpose is that thing, all those voices in your head that can get in the way. And something as simple as that of just feeling like I don't know what he's talking about can really interrupt that. And I've also been in conversation with managers where they've asked me what my goals are. And I've literally, because I haven't done the work and I haven't been clear on it, I've just said to my manager what I think they want to hear. Terrible idea, because then they're going to go looking for roles in areas that they think I want to do, which is actually not what I want to do. But that's what I said to them because I thought I'd get fired because I was so scared about screwing it up. So I have done this very badly in the past, and it's been a long journey. And I think when it comes to purpose, don't worry if you don't get this overnight or next week or even next year. It's a long-term game. And for me as an engineer who likes efficiency and getting stuff done, that's a hard thing for me to grasp. So to work out my purpose, I actually found reading the book by Simon Sinek really helpful, The Power of Why. And the moment I discovered my purpose, I was on a run. I was training for a marathon, actually, Sydney Harbour. And I don't know what line of the book it was, but it just dawned on me, like, wow, that is that one thing that drives me. So I definitely recommend reading that book. And for me, it was, I help people be and do things they never thought they could be or do. And when I realized that, it like unraveled all these things for me. So we have one of my businesses helps students in high school love maths. Then there's the engineering one of, I didn't think I could be an engineer. Now there's the leadership programs that I'm running. And so that is helping young people be leaders that they didn't think they could be. So it just, my life made sense to me. So when you know when you've got it, when everything kind of makes sense. And another place that really helps me do that is just sitting in nature and having that kind of happy place that I go to. So that would be another recommendation while you're doing that work, is go to a place that really inspires you and just really tap into your authentic self. It does not matter what your purpose is. Like, no one is going to judge you for whatever you say, and it'll just light you up. So people will really see that.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I work with my clients a lot on finding the purpose. So my clients that come to me and join my 3 months program, actually the first thing we do is working on the leadership brand and the leadership identity, and working on the purpose is one of the key elements. And it does take a lot of time. And I always tell them, like, don't even get too concerned about what it sounds like or having the perfect written, your purpose when you just shared it. Yeah, of course, it sounds amazing, but I'm sure the words were not there right away to make it sound like that, right? So sometimes we know what it is and it just is like a bit weird, fragmented, 2-3 sentences somehow put together, and over time it becomes this really nice fleshed out version that is easy for us to repeat and just sounds good for us and other people. But I think a lot of people, they always think, oh, but it has to be this magic wording and I have to have this slogan of my life, and you don't, right? Like, it's not about getting it perfect straight away. It can take time, but it's so important to really do that and start that early on, and just sit with it and keep thinking about it and reconnecting. For me, to really find my purpose has taken years, because I was in this corporate career for 10 years where I became a leader. And throughout the leadership journey, I realized what I enjoyed the most was actually developing other leaders and really stepping into their strength and to become courageous leaders. But I didn't know that that was what it was. You know, I did that and enjoyed that, but I was still in a manufacturing world and doing all the things. So I think then I was on maternity leave and I started to think about it and suddenly see opportunities. And then at some point I'm like, yeah, that's what I got to do. I got to help other leaders and emerging leaders become confident leaders that are courageous, that lead with their values, that lead with their strength, and really help them step into that. And really for me, it was changing the way we do leadership as well, and changing the way, especially in the engineering industry, I find there's lots of old school leadership. So I think changing that and encouraging people that they can all become leaders, whether they have people reporting to them or not. So for me, that's kind of how my purpose has developed. So I think it can be a journey, but as long as we start to think about it early on and start to reflect on it regularly so that we have something that we're working towards to, I think that's kind of the key.
Yeah, definitely. And you might think it's something and try it on, and it might not be that, and that's okay too. I love the expression of, it's like trying on a jacket in a shop and thinking, you know, does this fit right? Or like, I think it does. And you get home and you're like, oh, actually, it's not what I thought it was. And I think purpose can be a lot like that. Is you might try something on and think, yes, that's it. You might even do a project. You might start to, you know, align your life to that way. And then you realize, oh, it's actually a bit different. But again, you've gone through that process and you can kind of cross that one off your list. So don't be afraid to start and actually try it on like a jacket and keep going with it. And then you can always take the jacket off and put on a new one.
Exactly. And you can just change. And it's a bit of a journey, isn't it? Like, who knows what we will be doing in a few years and where this is going to go. And I think it's quite a fluid process too. And it can be your purpose, but then it can take a whole different shape. Like your purpose, as you said yourself, you have the different businesses. And in each business, it looks actually different, the way you deliver their purpose. So again, it can be very flexible and very fluid to know your purpose and spend some time on it. And I talked about values before, and I do actually have a resource if anybody wants to work on their values. I have a workbook that you can download at annekoopman.com/values, and it will guide you through a few exercises to actually start to define your values as the baseline to build your leadership brand. Let's talk a bit about 2021 and what is key now that we're entering this new year. And especially when we think about last year and how COVID-19 has suddenly changed, especially here in Melbourne in Australia, where it suddenly has changed the way we do work completely. And so many businesses are still yet a year later working remotely. Teams are remotely, some teams are returning or on a roster system. What do you think becomes important if we want to establish or position ourselves as a leader in 2021?
It's a really interesting question and such an important time as we're kicking off the year to be thinking about this. So a few years ago, I was working on a couple of projects actually. When I was an engineer with the firm Arab, I was working on our new office, which was activity-based working. So we actually set up a lot of our offices to create connection, to create that networking, to create those accidental conversations. And now that we're working from home, I feel like it's dramatically reduced. And I was even speaking with a mentor this week who was sharing about one of the boards that she's on. And she said, I really miss those conversations at the end where you go, oh, how do you think that went? And you actually get that kind of vibe or, you know, interaction, or you might find out key piece of information before and after meetings. And that's not happening right now because we're locked into these Zoom calls. So I think it's really important for people who are aspiring leaders or in leadership roles to increase the number of accidental conversations that we're having. And I know I'm guilty of this. I might send a couple of emails backwards and forwards to book in a time when I could pick up the phone, have a 2-second conversation. Hey, just checking in, how you going? And so I've started to do that on my morning walk, where I'll call a couple of people and see how they're going, and having those random out of the blue conversations myself. And it's been amazing, the connection that I've got from that. So I think the first one is really increasing the level of conversations you're having that are the accidental ones. And then there's a lot of places that you can still turn up to, even though you might be online or working from home. So now more than ever, taking on some of those extracurricular opportunities are a great way to network and connect. And you might be feeling a bit maybe scared or might not like networking. I know a lot of people don't. So it could just be starting small, like just turning up to the event. Then after you feel comfortable with that, speaking up and saying something. And then after that, it might be taking it to another level and stepping up as a leader to put on your own event. And something like a progression like that could be a really great way to start to test out and experiment with your own personal leadership while we're working in these remote environments.
And it's also a really good way to start to position ourselves as a leader, right? Because if we're in a remote environment, it's really hard and we're missing those little conversations. Also really hard to position ourselves and kind of put our hand up and be like, hey, I'm here and I'm ready to take on the leadership role. Because sometimes, I mean, there's a lot in the office that happens, right? There's a lot of conversations that happens just on the hallway, or somebody has an idea and quickly pulls someone in and they just have a discussion, and all of that is kind of missing now. And so sometimes we might think we're missing out on opportunities or we're not seen. So doing these extra activities or joining networking events, but also putting our hands up for some extra work in the office even could be really beneficial to position ourselves. And when we think about communication, how can we connect with people even if it's via Zoom? How can we make that even stronger? What do you think?
Oh, good question. I know for me, like I've, put my makeup on, still treat it like a professional meeting, put on, my suitable work attire. So I think the most important thing is you feeling confident in yourself and then having that connection. So making eye contact, like for example, I ran some leadership sessions this week where there were people who didn't have their camera on, and I did find it a bit harder to connect with them. And I really would have preferred to have their camera on, but also, maybe they weren't comfortable. So I didn't make a big deal out of it as well. So I think if you're wanting to step up as a leader, then your communication as a leader isn't just the words you say, it's how you look, how you present yourself. If you look like you're working from a basement, then is there something you can do about that? Even like a virtual background is important. So there's a lot of different ways we can communicate as a leader when we're over Zoom or online. And it's about taking that initiative and thinking about all of those different facets that you communicate.
I like that. I think that's really good, how we present ourselves and how we make sure that we still come across as professional as well. And I think an important thing to add though is as well, if we now communicate more remotely with our teams, let's say we already have a team, it's really important, I think, that we put in that extra effort, because these accidental conversations are missing, right? And we actually have to make up for that. I worked with a few groups over last year, and it was just interesting to see how some of them had not even thought about how they could add in the socializing aspect of the team, how they could think about coming together just for a lunch, for example, like these little things of connecting on a deeper level and getting to know people. Because I think key to leadership nowadays, when I think about leaders and how they should position themselves, I think key, as you said, connection is really key. And that goes to a deeper level, right? It's about building that trust, getting to know the people on your team. And it does take more effort now, because we have to really put the time in. We have to call them, as you said, we have to think about like social activities. And I know some teams that did it so well, they got really creative without making it overbearing, because of course we all spend lots of time on Zoom, and at some point you're like, okay, I'm over it now, like turn the camera off. But they still got creative. And then there's teams that have not done anything. So I think putting in the extra effort, really thinking about how can I connect to the different people? What do the people need? Some love group settings, some love this one-to-one conversation. And I love how you said, like, you call people on your walk, because that can be powerful too, to just move it away from Zoom and just have a phone conversation just for a change. And instead of being on Zoom, let's all just move, go for a walk, and we just have a chat, and not even about work. I just want to know how you're going. I think that was really a really good point too.
Thanks. And I think there's also little things as well. You just reminded me, it could seem like a big thing, like you've got a big deal to have a meeting or whatever on Zoom, but there are so many little ways that you can engage people as well. So some of my little tricks that I do, if I'm facilitating, I might start off with a song as part of the session. Lovely Day is one of my favorite go-tos, just to get people in a great mood. And then little interactions and engagement. So there might be people, like I said, with their camera off, but I'll say, when you finish the exercise, give us a thumbs up, or when you're ready to move on, chuck an emoji in, or, they do like physical thumbs up or kind of how you're going. And it might seem small. And to begin with, when I was first using Zoom, I didn't really think much of it. I just thought, well, that's a really helpful thing for me as the leader of the conversation to know where people are at. But I found by doing little things like that, or asking a question and popping it in the chat, it gets so much more engagement. And when you establish that from the beginning, then you kind of get on a roll. Have you found that with your communication online as well?
Totally. And I had to learn really quickly as well, because I remember that, because I was teaching at Melbourne University the whole last year, and we were in semester 1, and I think in week 3, we suddenly had to move to online teaching, and we had 1 week to get ready. And suddenly you think about, because I've always done facilitation and training, even in my corporate role, training and facilitation had been part of my role for the 10 years. So I've been so confident in leading the room, being in the room with people and having a bit of fun and banter and getting everybody involved and checking in with the quiet people. And I was like, oh God, how do you do that over Zoom suddenly when you have 20 people, 30 people, 40 people over Zoom? And then, yeah, I did so much research and try out. And I have to agree, like, it's the little things. You don't even have to think about massive, complicated things. It's the little things, some warm-up activities. One of my go-to things, and people who've been in my trainings and programs, they know, I always get people to get up and do some squats in between, for example, or sometimes push-ups or whatever we come up with, because it just gets the energy moving, people laugh. And, there's lots of little things that you can do to just break it up a bit, but also get people engaged. Some people are not confident speaking up and unmuting themselves and talking on Zoom. They find that really weird and awkward. And maybe in an in-person setting, they would do it, maybe, but maybe on Zoom, somehow it's just different. So then having an opportunity for them to either, the annotation function is really good on Zoom as well, either use that, or having the chat box where they can just add questions or comments or answer a question without having to unmute themselves. It's really important just to cater for all the different people you have in your team. And I think that's why it's so important as a leader to really tune in to who are the people that I'm talking to, who are the people that are in my team that I'm interacting with, and your stakeholders too, of course, if we talk about selling our brand, right? Who are the people that I'm interacting with, and how can I connect to them on a deeper level? What are their preferences, and how can I really create that relationship? I think it's really key. There's a big learning curve. It's kind of interesting as well, because we never stop learning and evolving, don't we?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's funny you say that around the communication. We did a team exercise where when we could meet in person, of what were people's communication preferences in my team at Swinburne University. And I love picking up the phone and calling people. And not everybody does. And I think, oh my gosh, that's crazy. It's such a great way to connect and get the answer straight away. But I found out my boss hates it. He loves text message. And I feel like text message is really impersonal. And I feel like it's not a form of communication that is my preference. And so it made sense that why, when I called my boss, he sounded a bit, I don't know, off put, or I wouldn't say grumpy, but just a bit, I thought there was something wrong. I thought I'd done something wrong, or, those immediate negative thoughts came into my mind. But actually, he just doesn't like phone calls. So asking a simple question of your team of how do you like to be communicated with can be so powerful. And it's totally changed how I communicate with my team. And we actually filled it out on almost like a business model canvas, but kind of our team canvas. And we put them up on the wall, but we also got a digital photo of it. So I can actually look it up and go, oh, that's right. This person likes this way. This person likes the other way. I'm going to go to their preferences. And it's actually been so much easier to communicate and relieving.
I love that. I think, and it's just so important to, first of all, understand, like when I run communication training, we talk about that. We talk about the different preferences and also how people take in information, and that often there's so much going on in people's minds. So even if they react in a certain way, it often has nothing to do with us, like with your boss, he just doesn't have the preference. So really tuning in and asking people, how would they like to stay in touch? When we just started to move to remote work last year, with a lot of my clients, we really talked about check in with each of them and define the best approach for them. How many one-on-one check-ins do they want to have? Is it Zoom? Is it over the phone? Do you do email check-ins? How do you follow up on their work? Because it's much harder, because they can't just come knocking at your door anymore and just pop their head into your office. So really understanding how would they like it, and together define a plan is so important. Don't assume. I think it's just so easy to just ask. And as a leader, you got to learn to be a bit flexible. So if you don't like phone conversations, but your team members do, you just have to, I think sometimes as well, be flexible and practice that and just be okay with it, because I think that's part of leadership, is to be able to adapt to these different preferences of your team members, even if it might not be your preference.
Absolutely. And you don't need to be the team leader to implement this, right? You can start totally. Now, whatever your role is in the team, you can be a team member. Like I'm in one of my teams, I'm not the leader, and you can actually start to test out some of these things before you get there. And actually that is showing leadership, and your team will see that you care. And that is leadership, I think. So you don't think, oh, I've got to wait till I'm the team leader before I implement these things. Test them out now.
Such a good point, because that's, again, the thing about leadership. It's just, how can you create impact? How can you create strong relationships and position yourself as a leader? And you can do that in any position where you're at. You can do that just for you and your relationships and how you communicate with your colleagues. So what would you say when you think back on your life so far, your young life? What has been like your biggest leadership lesson?
It probably comes from my biggest leadership failure. And I strongly believe that the more you fail, the more you learn, and that's where we can actually have the most learning. So a couple of years into starting Power of Engineering, the first business I started, we had gotten funding, we'd run all these events, we'd gone into different states across Australia, things were going really well. And we also had a small number of really dedicated volunteers. And I thought to be a good leader, you should kind of give people the space and freedom to create whatever they wanted. I would say I'm a don't tell me what to do person, don't really like having a manager. I'm not a very good employee. So that's what I thought everybody wanted. And within a short period of time, we actually had all of our volunteers leave, and it was just me and my co-founder, Jillian. And I remember when the last volunteer called up to say they quit, I was on my balcony in Sydney and it was a sunny day. And I just thought, should we just stop? Should we just stop this organization altogether? And I knew I did not want to stop because it was something I cared so much about. We also then had our funding cut. We were supposed to have 3 years of funding and they didn't fund the 3rd year. So we literally had one partner come on board and it was such a small amount of money. So it's a pretty bad situation. So I kind of regrouped and thought, okay, if I rebuild this, how can we rebuild it right? So the first person that I got on the team next was actually a HR professional. And so she really understood people. So she helped think about what are the kinds of people we want in the organization, what are the kinds of experiences we want them to have, and think about succession planning. So from that, it had me realize that as a leader, you've got to be able to share that vision with people. You've got to have this vision for people to be drawn towards, to go, I can see myself in that. And when I work with new people in our team, I say, what are your goals personally? How do they align with that vision? And actually, I've had volunteers come on board, and if their goals don't align with the vision, then it's not the right fit for them. So being really clear about that vision, and then giving people some structure and some boundaries to work around really works. I thought it would be stifling for people, but people just want to know where they're going, and those boundaries are really helpful. So it is that fine balance of vision and structure, and that's what's exciting about being a leader, is figuring out how to get those 2 things right.
I love that. And I think some other thing that I can hear there is also to just, again, look at what are your strengths actually, and what are the areas that just don't come as natural to you, like really tuning into the people and what they need and want. So you brought someone in who really is passionate about that and can really start to take your vision, but actually bring it down to the people and transform that vision into pieces that align with the people, or find the right people that align with that. So I think that's really powerful as well, I guess, to understand this is where my strengths are, this is what I can do, this is where I can shine. But yeah, fair enough. Here, I probably wasn't as strong. So a few things went wrong. No problem at all. How can I fix this? How can I rebuild this? So I think that was a powerful lesson that I could hear out of there as well.
And I think anyone can be a leader. It's leaders, is leaders born or made? I heard that again recently. And I think leaders are made. If you really want it, you can train yourself, you can get the skills that you need. And absolutely starting with your strengths is the first piece. Whatever they are, great. Go with that and really own that. And it took me a long time to really own my strengths, and that held me back for such a long time as a leader, because I couldn't really fully express myself and my authentic self as a leader. So whatever your strengths are, they're awesome, and embrace them, and then find those gaps. And you're going to learn from people, and don't try and be everything to everyone. One of my mentors, who was formerly the CEO of Arup, told me he went to a presentation where they talked about 16 leadership traits. Can't remember what they were now. The person presenting said, you only have one trait that you're really good at in this context. And he was a CEO of this massive engineering firm, and he just felt like there was a lot less pressure, because he went, oh, great, I only need to be good at one thing. Exceptional people are good at 2 things. And he said he felt really relieved. And it certainly was relieving when I heard that from him, because I think I try and be good at everything. And I just know that I'm not. I don't like saying I'm not good at things, but I'm not. So we just need to own that and work to that.
Yes, exactly. And I think it's such a good lesson, because when you start, especially in the corporate world, where there's a certain perception of what a leader is, we are always measured against that. And it's kind of like this one size trying to fit all version of a leader. And so many times we just don't fit it, or people don't get promoted because they're lacking this or that. And that's exactly what I want to work against, because I think, yes, as you said, everybody can be a leader. We just need to know what we're good at and how we can use that to create the impact. How can we use that to build the relationships, to come up with ideas, to sell the ideas, and to make it happen? And for each of those, we might need support. So we might not be good at all of these. We might not be good at selling it or making it happen. But for that, we can get people on board. So really knowing that and honing into that, I think is really, really key. And I always ask my guests at the end, what does it mean for you to lead like you? And I know we covered quite a bit about that, but how would you summarize that? What does it mean for you specifically to lead like you?
Owning my power would be the summary of that. And luckily I have a wonderful, gorgeous husband who reminds me how to own my power, because sometimes I forget about it, and do things that are not so leaderly. So I think owning your power, whatever that is, and being authentic is, yeah, that's what it means to me.
Fantastic. Beautiful. Thank you so much for joining me today. I think we got a lot of good nuggets out of there. And what can people do? How can they find you if they would love to hear more about the work that you do? Because she does amazing work. So how can they follow you?
Please connect with me on LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn. I'm pretty obsessed with it. So connect with me there. Go to my website, felicityfury.com. And if you want to learn more about the leadership program I'm running, all the information is on there. We've actually got a program kicking off in March, which goes for 12 months. So check it out there. I'd love to connect with you. And thanks so much for listening to this session. Anne is super amazing. If you haven't followed her, follow all her things, Instagram. I'm sure you've got them all over your website and podcast, Anne, but also recommend connecting with Anne as well. She's very inspiring online.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Thanks so much for joining me, for giving your time. And yeah, I would love to hear from you. What has inspired you the most? What is something that you've taken away? What is something that sparked something in you? Send us a message, write a comment, write a review, and let us know what you think and what you're going to take with you for 2021 to build your leadership brand. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we talk to you soon. Bye.